I think all the younger guys come in and look to some of the old timers to school them on how to carry themselves. But I got to be honest with you too. At the same time, the younger generation nowadays, they're okay. They're okay, and they'll listen only to a certain degree. The younger generation, they're gonna whatever they're gonna do it their way. If it comes when it comes right down to it, the younger generation is gonna do just what they seem to be right. In any given situation, they'll listen to some of us older guys, and we can sway them. Especially me being white. Okay, that's another issue too. Some of your black cliques or factions, some of your Mexican, you know what I mean? They're a little more structured. Maybe their old timers have a little more say so. Speaking of this yard right here, just for this yard right here, I'm an older white guy, but I mean, we don't have some of the same structure as other ethnic groups. We just don't, and so I can't really speak too much on theirs, but only in the sense that the more structured, then the more possibly that older guys will be listened to, respected, and able to maybe steer some of these youngins into either not doing something or doing something, whatever the case may be. Act right, don't get stupid on the yards and shit like that. But it is a true story in general. It is a true story in general that kids come in. I remember when I first came in, I came into Old Folsom in the early 80s. It was rocking and rolling there. I remember, I think it was 1984. There was 14 murders, like 200 and something stabbings, and I'm talking about not little old these were vicious. This was vicious shit going on, and I kept my mouth shut. I listened and I watched, and I stayed alive and I stayed out of trouble. You know what I mean?
You got a lot of them come up and call me OG, since I'm a little older than most of them. OG, can we do this? Can we do that? Things like that. Which is a compliment, yeah, and it's respect. I play dominoes with them, cards with them, baseball, basketball, and they respect me.
Youngsters, they haven't changed much from day one. I was a youngster, and there wasn't a whole lot that, and as we call him, OG could tell me, and with me, the way I look at it is that I get a young man, and first of all, I don't try to raise anybody else's kids, because that's essentially what they used to try to ask the OG to look out for the youngsters and this, that, and that. I don't do that. And how it used to work with peer pressure. And peer pressure doesn't work in CDC anymore, and that's because the administration won't allow they won't allow us to operate with peer pressure. So I can't sit there and say, okay, well, you need to do this, or you should do this, that, and other, because if you do this, or you don't do this, you will be subject to what I have to offer. I can't do that, you see what I'm saying? So peer pressure doesn't work. So when you talk about youngsters, and the old timers, this, that, now, yeah, you got some youngsters that'll listen, and let's assume that you have older guys that are willing to, and it's a problem. It's a problem. But and I don't think that's just with us. I think that's with the green and the blue, because I see young cops around here that's all I can do is make sure I stay out of his way, because I can see this is not going to go well. You know what I'm saying? But then you got the older cops that are the same mind as I am, and man, I don't want to be involved in that. I don't have time for that. And see, so that inevitably that's what ends up happening. That's why you get tired of going to the hole. You get tired of these confrontations, and you just want to just do your little number and just try to stay on out the way. And that's what that's what happens to older guys, because we can't get out there and run around out here and be involved in all these little prison riots and wrestle and tussle with these cops, because the cops say that you can't do that, and what am I going to do? So I can't do all that. And I tell kids this, a lot of these youngsters around here, you can get used to a lot of things. I can get used to standing accountable, or I can get used to the guards telling me that I need to submit for strip search. I can get used to CDC, just having all these different types of imposition, these different types of rules, these different things they do to me, right? But the one thing is, it's just hard to get used to being locked. It's hard. I can get used to not even having sex, but I just cannot get used to day in and day out not being able to come and go like I need to go. That's the problem. That's the key thing right there. You know, we can talk about technology. We can talk about we can talk about all kinds of things, but it's because it's innate in me like it is in anyone else to be able to just come and go and to enjoy certain things that we take that you take for granted. You know, you being Joe Blow or John D. Public. You know, that's the thing. That's the real thing right there. You know.
I guess in a nutshell, I'm trying to grow up and be a man and go home and be responsible and try to be a good person and maybe try to shake 25 years of penitentiary off my back and maybe, I don't want to die in prison. I don't want to die in prison. I mean, I'm just about 52 and if I could get 20, I'm pretty healthy still. I've spent 25 years in the penitentiary, so it's kept me kind of healthy, But if I can get home and get 20 years of out of the back end of my life free, and hopefully free of drugs, shit, I can die, peacefully maybe, Not in here. No, man. I'm just burnt out. I'm burnt out on this shit, Burnt out making the same mistakes over and over again. Like I said, it's all behind drugs, shit like that.
On the outside, I was a chef cook, so I'm planning on doing something like that. I want to own my own restaurant, do a buffet restaurant. I've been cooking for 40 years. Went to culinary school, spent 5 years teaching, got college background, spent 4 years in college. Hope to spend the rest of my life doing that.
Truthfully, I'm not worried about employment. I've always been a hustler, so to speak. I can find a job. If I can get in somebody's front door, so to, in an office or whatever, I can usually talk myself into getting employed. As long as I can, like I said, stay away from that weakness that I've had for heroin.
See, because when they convicted me, they said life without the possibility of parole, which means that they mean to carry me out of here. And I can't see that. I'm opposed to that.